Karen poisoned my guard dog to use my pool. She is now facing felony cruelty charges. The vet's voice cracked on the phone. Your dog ingested antifreeze. I need you here now. I dropped my coffee mug on the kitchen tile and it shattered, but I didn't even look down. Rex was more than a guard dog. He was the only thing standing between my family and Karen Whitfield. Karen Whitfield ran our HOA board like a queen ruling a tiny, terrified kingdom of stucco houses. 3 days earlier, she demanded my pool gate stay unlocked for community access. I refused. Now my German Shepherd was foaming at the mouth in an emergency clinic and I knew exactly why. My name is Marcus Bell. I bought my house in Willow Creek Estates 4 years ago with my wife, Dana. We wanted a quiet neighborhood, good schools for our daughter and a backyard pool she could grow up in. Instead we got Karen Whitfield, HOA president, self-appointed sheriff of every fence height and mailbox color. At first her rules seemed almost comical: no wind chimes, no visible hoses, grass cut to exactly 3 inches. I laughed it off. Dana rolled her eyes. We thought she was just another overzealous busybody. We were wrong. Karen didn't enforce rules. She weaponized them, deciding whose violations mattered based on who she liked. Her own lawn, oddly, was always exempt from the 3-inch rule. Convenient, considering she mowed it herself, badly. The first real friction came over something laughably small: the color of my mailbox post. I'd painted it navy blue. HOA code technically allowed dark tones. Karen decided navy wasn't dark enough. She sent a violation notice with a $150 fine attached, hand-delivered, smiling the whole time like she'd won a prize. I asked to see the official color chart. She said it was under review and couldn't be shown to residents. That was Karen's first tell, though I didn't recognize it yet. She loved rules only when she controlled them. Neighbors warned me quietly, in driveway whispers, never at meetings. Don't fight her. She always wins, one said. Another neighbor, an elderly widow named Ruth, had been fined for a garden gnome collection Karen called clutter. Ruth paid every fine without protest. She was scared, she admitted, of what Karen might do if she resisted. I didn't understand real fear yet. I still believed reasonable people could resolve this over coffee and paperwork. Dana wanted to just pay the mailbox fine and move on. Pick your battles, she said. I almost agreed. Then Karen showed up uninvited to my backyard barbecue, clipboard in hand, photographing my pool from the fence line. Just documentation, she said sweetly, for the community amenity registry. I didn't even know that registry existed. That night I started a folder. Every notice, every photo, every date and time. I didn't know why yet. Something in Karen's eyes that day looked less like rule enforcement and more like hunger. I trusted my gut. My daughter Mia asked why the mailbox lady kept coming to our house. I told her not to worry. But I was worried. Karen wasn't just annoying anymore. She was circling us like she'd already picked her next move. The pool notice arrived 2 weeks later, a formal HOA amenity access proposal demanding shared community pool hours. My private, backyard pool, the one Dana and I paid for entirely ourselves, was suddenly community property on paper. I called the HOA management office. They confirmed Karen had submitted the proposal under an obscure 1998 bylaw clause. The bylaw was real, technically, buried in 40 pages nobody had read in decades. Karen had read every page. She'd built her power on exactly that, knowing the fine print better than anyone who'd ever bothered to check. I refused to sign the access agreement. Karen's response came fast, sharp and personal in a way that chilled me. Residents who don't cooperate with community initiatives, her email read, often find compliance issues in other areas. That wasn't a rule citation. That was a threat, dressed up in HOA letterhead and passive-aggressive corporate language. I forwarded the email to my brother-in-law, a paralegal. He read it twice and said, "Save everything. Everything." I installed Rex 3 months later, not as a pet, but as protection, For Mia, for Dana, for the house. Rex was trained, gentle with family, but sharp-eyed toward strangers who lingered too long near our fence line. Karen hated him instantly. She called him an aggressive nuisance breed in an HOA newsletter without naming him directly. Everyone in the neighborhood knew exactly who she meant. Rex had never bitten anyone. He'd only ever barked at her. The barking, it turned out, was the smartest early warning system I could have asked for. Rex sensed her coming. Every single time Karen approached our property line uninvited, Rex barked before I even heard her car door close. I started to realize Rex wasn't guarding against burglars. He was guarding against her. And she knew it. One afternoon I caught her staring at Rex through the fence slats, not with fear, but with cold calculation. "That dog is a liability," she said flatly. "Liabilities get removed one way or another." Then she smiled and left. I told Dana what she'd said. Dana went pale. "That's not a rule complaint, Marcus. That's a threat to our dog." We debated calling the police, but what would we even report? A woman had said a menacing sentence and smiled. Instead I bought a wireless camera system, mounting one directly on the fence facing Karen's usual approach route. I told myself I was being paranoid. 3 weeks later, that paranoid camera would save everything I still had left. The HOA sent a formal notice, unauthorized fencing height violation, camera installation violation and aggressive animal complaint, all at once. 3 violations, filed the same week I installed cameras. The timing wasn't coincidence. Karen was accelerating and I felt it. At the next HOA meeting, I stood up and asked Karen directly why my dog was suddenly a board priority. She smiled that practiced smile and said, "Public safety concerns don't wait for convenient timing, Mr. Bell." Applause. From nobody. Ruth, the widow, caught my eye afterward and mouthed silently, "Be careful." I nodded, not fully understanding yet why. That night my camera caught something strange: Karen's car, idling near my property line at 11:47 p.m., engine running. She didn't get out. She just sat there, watching the house, for 6 full minutes before driving away slowly. I saved the footage to 3 separate devices. My paralegal brother-in-law said, "This is the start of a pattern." I didn't sleep that night. Something told me the mailbox fines and pool letters were only the opening act. 2 weeks passed with unnerving quiet. No notices, no fines, no clipboard visits. The silence felt worse than the fights. Dana said Karen was probably moving on to torment someone else. I didn't believe it for one single second. Rex started acting strange on a Tuesday morning, lethargic, refusing breakfast, drinking water like he couldn't get enough. By afternoon he was vomiting, stumbling, his back legs giving out beneath him on the kitchen floor. I panicked instantly. Dana called the emergency vet while I carried 60 pounds of shaking dog into the back seat of my truck. The vet met us at the door and rushed Rex straight to the back. "How long has he been like this?" I didn't have a clean answer. Hours, maybe. Long enough that dread had already settled cold in my stomach. Blood work came back within the hour. Ethylene glycol poisoning. Antifreeze. Deliberately sweet-tasting, deliberately lethal, deliberately not accidental. Dogs don't accidentally find antifreeze in a fenced backyard, the vet said carefully. Someone would have to place it there. I thought immediately of the idling car at 11:47 p.m. 6 minutes was exactly enough time to toss something over a fence. Rex survived, barely, after 2 days of intensive treatment and a bill that made my hands shake signing it. The vet documented everything in an official report: acute ethylene glycol toxicosis, consistent with intentional poisoning, not accidental exposure. I filed a police report that same afternoon, attaching the vet report and the timestamped footage of Karen's idling car. The responding officer was sympathetic but honest, proving intent is hard without direct evidence. This is a start, though. A start. Not enough yet. But I finally understood what Ruth had tried to warn me about weeks earlier. Karen didn't just enforce petty rules. She escalated against anyone who refused to bend, and she escalated without mercy. I confronted her directly at her front door, vet report in hand, voice shaking with a fury I'd never felt before. She looked at the papers, then at me, completely unbothered. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Mr. Bell. Your dog probably got into something in your own yard. Maybe you should supervise your animals more responsibly," she said. The audacity of it, victim blaming while standing 3 feet from the woman who'd nearly killed my dog, stunned me silent. That night, Dana found me sitting in the dark garage, staring at Rex's empty food bowl. "We fight back now," she said. We hired an attorney, Priya Anand, who specialized in HOA disputes and, coincidentally, animal cruelty statutes in our state. Priya reviewed everything: the mailbox fine, the pool bylaw, the threatening email, the idling car footage, the vet report. "This isn't a neighbor dispute anymore," she said. "This is a documented pattern of harassment escalating to animal cruelty." She explained our state's animal cruelty statute had recently been upgraded, intentional poisoning now qualified as a felony charge. Karen, it turned out, hadn't just wanted access to my pool. Priya found something buried deeper in HOA financial records. Karen's own backyard pool had been drained and condemned by the county 8 months earlier for a structural crack. She'd hidden that fact from the entire HOA board while quietly maneuvering to force community access to my pool instead. The pool letters weren't about community fairness at all. They were Karen's private plan to use my pool herself. My stomach turned. She tried to poison my guard dog just to remove the one obstacle between her and my backyard. Priya filed a formal police complaint alongside the criminal referral, citing premeditation given the drained pool discovery as clear motive. The detective assigned to the case, Detective Alvarez, requested my camera footage and the vet's toxicology report immediately. "This is enough for a search warrant," Alvarez said after reviewing everything. "We'll check her property for the antifreeze source." Word spread through the neighborhood fast. Suddenly other residents started quietly reaching out, sharing their own Karen stories. Ruth admitted Karen had once threatened to report her late husband's oxygen tank equipment as an unauthorized yard structure. Another neighbor, a young father named Dominic, said Karen once cited his newborn's baby monitor as unauthorized surveillance equipment. Dominic had photos too, Karen peering into his backyard the same week she'd filed that ridiculous baby monitor complaint. A pattern emerged: control, intimidation, escalation, and always plausible deniability wrapped in official-sounding HOA language. Priya began compiling a joint complaint, gathering 5 separate residents' documentation into one devastating pattern of harassment case file. Karen, sensing the tide shifting, called an emergency HOA board meeting, framing herself as the victim of a smear campaign. She stood at the podium, voice trembling with practiced emotion. "I've dedicated years to protecting this community's property values. And now, apparently, I'm being harassed by residents who simply don't like enforcement of rules they voluntarily agreed to." I watched neighbors nod along, some genuinely moved. Karen was, if nothing else, a masterful performer under pressure. But Ruth stood up, cane trembling, and said quietly, "You threatened my husband's oxygen tank, Karen. I have the letter." The room went silent. Karen's smile flickered, just barely, like a mask slipping half an inch before snapping back. "That was a routine equipment notice," she said quickly. "I don't recall the specific details of every single letter." Dominic stood next, holding up his phone. "You're in my backyard photos, Karen. The same week as the monitor complaint." Karen's composure cracked visibly now. "This is a coordinated attack," she snapped, pointing at me across the room. "Mr. Bell clearly organized this smear campaign after his own dog's unfortunate, entirely unrelated medical incident," she insisted. "Unfortunate and unrelated," I repeated slowly. "Detective Alvarez didn't think so when he requested a search warrant yesterday." The room erupted in whispers. Karen's face drained of color for the first time since I'd known her. "A search warrant is a formality," she said, voice higher now, tighter. "It doesn't mean anything's actually been found." But something had been found, though I wouldn't learn the details until Priya called me 2 days later with news. Detective Alvarez's team had searched Karen's garage and found an open jug of antifreeze with a torn, resealed cap. More damning, they found a partial fingerprint match on my own fence gate, lifted during the initial evidence sweep. Karen had claimed she'd never touched my property. The fingerprint told a very different, very incriminating story entirely. She was formally charged, one count of animal cruelty, upgraded to felony status given the premeditation and torture element. Additional charges followed, trespassing and a harassment count tied to the pattern of abuse file Priya had submitted. I expected relief. Instead I felt something closer to exhaustion, the adrenaline of months finally draining out all at once. Rex, thankfully, was recovering well by then, though the vet warned his kidneys would need lifelong monitoring afterward. Karen was released on bail within hours and true to form, she wasted no time constructing her next narrative. She posted on the neighborhood social app, framing herself as a victim of aggressive prosecution over a misunderstanding. Some residents believed her. Karen had spent years cultivating loyalty through small favors and selective rule enforcement, after all. One HOA board member, Denise, publicly defended Karen, calling the charges a witch hunt against community leadership. Denise, I later learned, had received 3 separate fine waivers from Karen over the years for undisclosed reasons. Priya warned me Karen's defense attorney would try to paint the fingerprint evidence as contaminated or improperly collected. Chain of custody arguments, Priya explained, are usually the last resort when the actual evidence is this strong. Sure enough, Karen's attorney filed a motion to suppress the fingerprint evidence, claiming procedural errors during the garage search. The hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks out. 6 weeks of uncertainty, of Karen still living 40 feet from my fence. Dana wanted to move. I understood the impulse, but something in me refused to let Karen win by default. We installed a second security system, this time with motion-triggered alerts sent directly to both our phones and Priya's office. Rex, weakened but stubborn, resumed his post by the fence line, watching Karen's house with something like vengeance in his eyes. I started attending every HOA meeting, recording each one, documenting every word Karen said in her own defense. At one meeting, Karen made a critical mistake. She referenced checking the pool gate the week before the poisoning. Nobody had asked her about the pool gate. She'd volunteered information only someone who'd been near my property would know. Priya seized on it instantly, subpoenaing Karen's cell phone location data for the 2 weeks surrounding the poisoning incident. The data came back with startling clarity. Karen's phone had pinged near my property line 4 separate times that week. Each ping corresponded to times my camera had also caught motion near the fence, a match no jury could ignore. Karen's attorney scrambled, arguing location data proved proximity, not intent. Priya calmly reminded the court, proximity plus poison equals pattern. The suppression hearing arrived. Karen sat rigid, makeup perfect, posture composed, but her hands trembled against the defense table. The judge reviewed the garage search procedures meticulously, line by line, while Karen's attorney argued every technical point available. The search warrant was properly obtained, properly executed and properly documented, the judge finally ruled. The evidence stands. Karen's face went rigid. For the first time, I watched her genuinely, visibly lose control of her own narrative. Outside the courthouse, reporters had gathered, a local news crew covering what they called the poisoned guard dog case. Karen tried to walk past cameras silently, but a reporter caught her. Ms. Whitfield, any comment on the felony charges? No comment, she snapped, then immediately followed it with, this entire situation has been grossly misrepresented by everyone. That contradiction, no comment followed by heated commentary, made the 6 o'clock news that same evening, unedited. Neighbors who'd once defended Karen began quietly distancing themselves, unfollowing her posts, skipping her HOA emergency meetings altogether. Denise, her staunchest defender, resigned from the board abruptly, citing personal reasons nobody in the neighborhood believed for a second. Priya told me the DA's office was now confident enough to move toward trial rather than a plea negotiation. Karen's attorney requested one final meeting, off the record, hoping to negotiate a plea before things got worse for her. I sat outside Priya's office while she took the call, my leg bouncing with a nervous energy I couldn't shake. They're offering a plea, Priya said afterward. Reduced charges, no jail time, just probation and a fine. I felt sick. After everything? After Rex nearly died? A fine? My voice cracked in a way I didn't expect it to. Priya nodded slowly. That's the system sometimes. But you get to decide whether to accept it or push for trial. Dana and I talked late into the night. Rex slept between us, scarred but alive, breathing steady and warm. If we go to trial, Dana said, everyone sees exactly what she did. No plea deal erases that from public record. I called Priya the next morning. Reject the plea. Take her to trial. I want this on record, permanently. Priya smiled for the first time in weeks. That's what I was hoping you'd say. I've already built the case for it. Trial was set for the following spring. In the meantime, something unexpected happened. Karen's own HOA turned against her. The remaining board members, fearing liability exposure from Karen's actions, voted to suspend her presidency pending trial outcome. Karen showed up to the vote meeting anyway, uninvited, demanding to speak. The new interim president refused her the floor. You no longer represent this community, he said flatly. Karen stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to crack the frame. That crack in the door frame became, oddly, a fitting symbol for everything Karen's carefully controlled world had become. More residents came forward once Karen lost her position, no longer afraid of retaliation now that her power had crumbled. A contractor revealed Karen had forced him to falsify inspection reports on shared property fencing years earlier, for a kickback. A former board treasurer admitted Karen had pressured her into hiding the condemned pool report from HOA financial disclosures. Priya added each new testimony to the growing case file, building not just a poisoning case, but a portrait of systemic abuse. Karen, isolated now, spent the winter months mostly indoors, her once immaculate lawn slowly overtaken by weeds she used to fine others for. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Neighbors quietly photographed her overgrown lawn, the same measurements she'd once weaponized against Ruth. Nobody filed a complaint though. Karma, it seemed, was doing the enforcement work for free this time around. Rex fully recovered by winter's end, though the vet confirmed permanent, minor kidney damage requiring lifelong monitoring and medication. Every twinge in his gait reminded me why we were pushing forward, why a plea deal would never have been enough. As trial approached, Karen's attorney tried one last maneuver, requesting a change of venue, claiming local bias against his client. The judge denied it, noting Karen herself had generated the local publicity through her own contradictory courthouse statements. I spent the weeks before trial rehearsing testimony with Priya, learning to stay calm under the pressure of cross-examination. The defense will try to make you seem vindictive, Priya warned. Stay factual. Let the evidence carry the emotion. Dana would testify too, along with Ruth, Dominic and 3 former board members. A wall of testimony, brick by brick. The night before trial, I sat with Rex on the back porch, watching the pool ripple gently under the moonlight. This was never really about a pool, I whispered to him. It was about someone deciding she owned everyone else's life. Trial morning arrived cold and clear. The courthouse steps were crowded with more reporters than I'd expected for a local case. Karen arrived in a tailored gray suit, chin lifted, playing the role of wrongly accused community leader one final time. Inside, the prosecution laid out the timeline methodically: mailbox fine, pool bylaw, threats, idling car, poisoning, fingerprint, phone data. Each piece alone might have seemed circumstantial. Together, laid end to end, they formed an undeniable, damning chain of intent. The vet testified first, describing Rex's symptoms in clinical, devastating detail. Several jurors visibly winced at the description. Ethylene glycol poisoning in a healthy adult dog, the vet stated, is virtually never accidental in a fenced yard. Detective Alvarez testified next, walking the jury through the garage search, the antifreeze jug, the fingerprint on my gate. Karen's attorney cross-examined aggressively, questioning chain of custody again. Alvarez calmly countered every point with documented procedure. Then came the phone data expert, mapping Karen's location pings directly onto my camera's motion-triggered timestamps, side by side. The overlap was almost perfect, 4 pings, 4 camera triggers, all within minutes of each other, across 2 separate weeks. I testified next, describing the mailbox fine, the pool letters, the threat about Rex being a liability removed one way or another. Karen's attorney tried to suggest I'd fabricated the threat from memory. I calmly played the recorded HOA meeting audio instead. Her own recorded voice filled the courtroom, liabilities get removed one way or another. Silence followed. Complete, total silence. Ruth testified about the oxygen tank threat. Dominic testified about the baby monitor complaint and the backyard photos. The former board treasurer testified about the hidden condemned pool report, revealing Karen's true motive for the Access campaign. Piece by piece, the jury watched Karen's carefully constructed image of righteous community leadership collapse into something far darker. Karen took the stand in her own defense, insisting repeatedly she'd never intentionally harmed any animal in her entire life. Under cross-examination, the prosecutor asked simply, "Then why was your fingerprint on Mr. Bell's fence gate that week?" Karen hesitated, just half a second too long. "I may have walked by to inspect the fence height violation." At 11:47 p.m., the prosecutor asked. Karen's mouth opened, then closed. No answer came. The jury noticed. Everyone noticed. Closing arguments took most of the afternoon. The prosecution painted a portrait of calculated cruelty disguised as bureaucratic authority. The defense argued reasonable doubt, circumstantial evidence, a woman simply doing her job too zealously. It felt thin, even to me. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. 6 hours of pacing hallways, drinking bad courthouse coffee, holding Dana's hand too tightly. When the foreman stood to read the verdict, the courtroom went utterly still, the kind of silence that has weight. On the count of felony animal cruelty, we find the defendant, Karen Whitfield, guilty. My knees nearly buckled with relief. On the count of criminal trespassing, guilty. On the count of harassment, guilty. 3 counts. 3 unanimous guilty verdicts. Karen's face crumpled for the first time in the entire case, the mask finally, completely, irreversibly gone. She turned toward the gallery, searching for sympathetic faces. She found none. Even Denise had stopped attending weeks earlier. Sentencing was scheduled for 1 month later. In the meantime, the County HOA Oversight Board permanently revoked her board eligibility. A new bylaw, drafted partly from our case, now barred anyone convicted of harassment-related offenses from serving on any HOA. Neighbors began calling it, half-jokingly, the Whitfield Rule. Karen's legacy, cemented forever in County HOA regulatory language. At sentencing, the judge cited the premeditation, the pattern of documented harassment and the total absence of remorse Karen displayed. "You didn't just harm an animal," the judge said. "You attempted to eliminate an obstacle to something you wanted." Karen received 18 months in county jail, 5 years probation, a permanent restraining order and mandatory forfeiture of her home. The forfeiture came from a separate civil suit PREA filed, covering veterinary costs, legal fees and punitive damages for harassment. Karen's house went up for sale within weeks, the for sale sign standing where her clipboard once patrolled our street. I watched the moving truck pull away one gray Tuesday morning, Rex sitting calmly beside me on the porch. For the first time in over a year, his ears stayed relaxed, his body loose, no tension coiled at the fence line. Ruth brought over a pie that afternoon, the first time she'd visited without fear trembling in her voice. Dominic's newborn slept peacefully in a stroller nearby, no monitor complaints, no surveillance accusations, just an ordinary quiet afternoon. The new HOA board, rebuilt from residents who'd testified, adopted transparent bylaws, published fine schedules and rotating leadership terms. Nobody would ever again read 40 pages of obscure clauses alone in a back office, plotting how to weaponize them. 6 months after sentencing, I received a letter forwarded from the county jail, Karen's handwriting cramped and defensive. She claimed she'd been unfairly targeted by a community that never appreciated her sacrifices. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Dana asked if I felt satisfied, finally, watching Karen's house sell to a young family with 2 golden retrievers. Satisfied isn't the word, I said. Relieved. Exhausted. Grateful Rex is still here to see it. That was closer to true. The vet bills, the legal fees, the sleepless months, none of it disappeared just because justice finally arrived. But something had shifted permanently in the neighborhood, an unspoken agreement that silence had cost all of us too much. Ruth started attending every HOA meeting after that, cane and all, refusing to let another Karen ever take root. Dominic became the interim board secretary, insisting every complaint be documented publicly, no more back-office fine negotiations. Rex, gray-muzzled now, still walked the fence line each evening, an old habit that no longer needed a reason. I still catch myself watching for headlights idling too long near the property line. Old fears fade slowly, if at all. Priya sent a final letter closing our case file, noting the civil settlement had fully covered Rex's ongoing medical care. She added a small note at the bottom, some people mistake authority for ownership. Glad the record finally corrected that. I framed the note next to Rex's original vet discharge papers, a strange pairing of trauma and closure side by side. Mia, older now, sometimes asks about the mailbox lady who used to scare everyone. I tell her the truth, simplified. Some people think rules make them powerful over others. But the real power is people telling the truth together. She nodded like she understood, then went back to tossing a ball for Rex, who chased it slower than before, but happily. The pool sits quiet most evenings now, no clipboard shadows at the fence, no idling engines, no hidden threats. Just a dog, a family, and a neighborhood that finally, painfully, learned the cost of staying silent too long.